focused on the instructional expenditures because it was the largest group. This meeting, we're going to focus on support services, which total about $37 million out of our $122 million budget from last year. So I broke that down. If you turn to page 4 in your handout, I broke that down by object codes. So the salary and benefits, of course, are the biggest hitters in this category. They're about 66% of the budget or of the expenditures in this function code. And that runs about $24 million worth of expenses. The next two that I have highlighted in gray there are purchase services, which is where we're going to talk about transportation and travel expenses. The other one is about $3 million worth of supply costs and our utilities. Some of the other categories of note, the professional services are in this category, and that's about $1.8 million of expenditures in last year. This is our nursing services, some of our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, early intervention assistants, mental health aides. So that all is within this category and various outside services we purchase to support the needs of our students. The property services, which is that next $2 million line item, that's rental for our copy machines, our trash service, lawn service, repair services. We contract with outside contractors for electrical or plumbing or those types of needs. That our water bill is also in that category for some odd reason. Yes. Correct.
How much is that?
The remaining debt service on the junior high is just over the senior high. The bulk of it. So I want to say there's only about $1 million worth of debt service payments on the junior high. There's a call date in 5 years. Yeah, but the bonds are financed similar to a mortgage over a 30-year period. Yes.
Yeah. So that's something you have to look at the debt service. It's going to be a fixed cost.
So and there'll be options for financial savings.
You keep the bond issues on.
Correct. We can refi and do some other things as well.
Yeah, so the junior,
Correct.
yeah, I think the junior high goes off of that within the next 3 or 4 years. And then the bulk of this building, the senior high school building is there. And again, currently, yes. Any other questions before I jump into the salary and benefits? These salary and benefit numbers on page number 6 of your handout are specifically related to support services. So this is the salary and benefits for over 400 employees within the school district. So it includes all of our school counselors, our therapy positions, maintenance, HVAC, all of our tradesmen, our police services team is in here, all of our security greeter, our school nurses, social workers, the tax office clerks, all of our clerical support, the principals, administrative teams, adult ed, technology, all of those are in this category. There is a 7% increase in salaries and wages in here over the last 6 years, which I think is pretty telling about how we've been able to control costs. We've filled a lot of positions by attrition or had savings through attrition. So even though the AASD contract has increased 2 to 3% annually, we've been able to do some things. Oh, sorry. Too busy with the handout. I'm not advancing slides. My apologies. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. So the other thing that you can see in here is benefits. So the benefits includes both health insurance, PSERS, retirement, and then the district share of Social Security, Medicare, those types of things. We've been able to hold those fairly steady over this 6-year time frame as well. The next slide, it shows a comparison of the Altoona Area School District to other schools within our cohort. We currently have about 21.93% of our budget in salaries and wages in this category. The average for other school districts similar to us in size is 19.75, so we're a little bit higher than average. But I would put out there that I think we're a little bit, Brad has used the term of a unicorn in school districts throughout the state, that we have 12 educational buildings, plus we have the administrative building. We have Adams that runs point on our maintenance. We have some fairly large athletic facilities. We have the fur warehouse. So we have a lot of buildings that we care for that kind of, I think that helps push us above the average. Our per student spend is slightly lower than average across the state when you look at salaries and benefits within this category.
Hey, all these school districts, do they have police services like we do? I can't imagine do they all?
I don't know the answer to that. I can
Yeah.
look and ask them. They all have some type of a security expense, I am sure. Whether they maintain their own police force like Altoona does, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I would say most do not have their own active police force. The majority of them are utilizing SPOs, which are school police officers, or SROs, where they're contracting either through a local law enforcement agency and or a security firm, depending on what it is. Very few have the setup that we have to where we have officers that have arresting powers. We are our own entity with MOUs with other local law enforcement. Interestingly, some school districts have actually come and toured with us because they want to go that direction. They're finding that their cost layout for resources, for a lack of resources, is much higher than what we are able to do things for internally with more authority and with more latitude in how we police our grounds, our buildings, our students, our staff. Johnstown was in about 3 weeks ago with their superintendent, their school safety coordinator, and they're actually, we're helping them kind of get things set up to where they can have a police force similar to what we have, because they just have such a difficult time staffing their SRO, SPO, in addition to finding the adequate level of support that they need. So again, we're very fortunate to have what we have, but I also think that we're very efficient in the way that we staff it and that we fund it.
And what we decided to add the armed security greeters to the elementary schools, we wouldn't have felt the full impact yet, right? I mean, that was
Not
fairly
in
recent.
this, would
Right.
no. And we can give you, as part of the budget presentation, we'll give you year-to-date numbers for the current year. And that's where we'll see the full impact of that. And even then, we weren't fully staffed until November, December, I would think.
Yeah, we've been fully staffed for a couple of months and we still had some comings and goings, but some of the cost is outfitting them with the Kevlar vests, with the weapons as they're becoming 235 certified. So that training is a piece of the cost as well, in addition to the mandatory training that they have before they even get started. So the training piece, in addition to the resources, the outfitting of those officers, but then obviously the personnel costs that are associated with it as well, will factor into that total number. The plan is to have a completely 235 certified staff with identified staff members at particular buildings moving into the next school year. We have a pretty good solidified team right now of where we have identified staff members who have committed to then continuing on and being in the buildings that they've been assigned to. So it's had its ups and downs, had some bumps in the road, but we're solidifying that staff moving forward.
And we were very fortunate. Haley and Ryan and her team over in federal programs was able to get grants that paid for a lot of the upfront costs to outfit all of the security greeters and those officers as they got their training.
So we've had to put some money into construction of like your secure vestibule areas. We had previously purchased the wands and the metal detectors with previous grants. that did not come out of local. So everything that you have hardware wise at the buildings was supplied that way. Now, we did have to invest in some furniture, some technology, and we still have some buzzers that have to be completed. So there's some wiring and some other small pieces that needed to be done, but pretty much for the most part, we're set in terms of, and it looks different at every building because every building's secure entry looks a little different. But I think we're pretty satisfied with the system that we have. Like I said, gaining access to our buildings is not easy anymore. And we're really limiting for procedurally who comes in and who doesn't. We're bringing more kids. If it's a dismissal, we're bringing the kids to them. They never actually have to come into the building. And if they are in the building, they're escorted to and from wherever they're going for a meeting, an IEP meeting, whatever it may be. So outside access to the buildings is very, very limited.
Any other questions? The next slide, or page 8 of your handout, is just a reminder. We covered this the last meeting. It just, the unfunded mandate that is retirement expense in Peters and the continued shortfall that we have that for that particular line item expenditure. Well, we have the two that you've mentioned, special education, retirement. I'm going to touch base on transportation as a requirement. So those are the three. Can you other?
Cyber squad.
Oh, and cyber, yes, and outside tuition.
So you do. Not everything is unfunded. Certain areas are unfunded.
And a lot of times it's partially funded or not properly. The requirements as it's laid out by school code or state federal regulations, they're just not funded at a level that they need to be for us to basically meet the requirements of the manual.
With that, then we're going to step into transportation, which is the other large expenditure within the 2000 function code. This slide, which is page 10 in your handout, outlines statewide transportation spend. And as you can see, it's been really jumping up over the last, well, since 2007 through 2022, which is the data available for this slide. The last year, especially, you can see a significant increase. A lot of that is attributed to fuel costs. The cost, many of the drivers' unions are negotiating higher wages to be able to drive buses in light of the shortage that we have with drivers. The cost of maintenance items and the availability of parts is much more difficult, which is driving up transportation expense, not just in our school district, but statewide. We just did a renewal. We're in year 2 of a 5-year renewal. So we've got 3 more years on our existing contract. We pay for fuel. They pay for insurance. Yes. So the next slide is supported by the data on the following slide. It was just much too comprehensive to try and get all squeezed into one part. Again, I was trying to track down school districts that had a similar square footage, similar student population and population density as a comparison. The Altoona School District, when I looked at these, our overall cost of transportation within our cohorts is lower than everybody else's, which is a great thing. What we're struggling with is our allowed cost. So we don't get our reimbursement from the state based on our actual spend. We get it based on our allowed cost, and that's a formula that involves loaded and unloaded miles of students transported, the age of the vehicle, what type of vehicle you're using, the distance you travel. So, I mean, it's a pretty complex calculation. We get about 52.7% of what we spend as allowed cost back to us. 72. No. So you get reimbursed for the amount of students assigned to the vehicle. So if I assign 72 students to the bus, but only 40 ride, I can claim 72 students. Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
So you'll be reimbursed for 72, you know, you have.
Right.
And if you notice, I mean, the school bus really didn't feel when you see a school bus at the end of the year.
Yeah. And
And it's natural, you have support, you have parents putting up with, yeah, it's that on the. Yeah, I know it might be, they're assigned a bus, but, you know, they have dance or something, they don't, you know, someone picks them up, but they are assigned, they do use the bus.
yeah, and that's the trouble. I mean, we save the seats on the bus for students because they'll ride 2 days out of a 5-day week. Some students ride every day. So you can only assign so many students to a vehicle and you have to save those seats for them. And it's a fine balancing act. We, especially for elementaries, we try and load as much as we can. 72 students on a bus is 3 students to a seat. And depending on the length of the route, you're asking for discipline problems when you load a bus that full. So we do our best to kind of find the fine line between allowing it to be a pleasant ride for students on a vehicle versus finding the best financial reimbursement for the district. Yeah. The majority of our transportation is on 72 passenger buses. We have, and these numbers are off the top of my head, so it could vary, give or take. We have about 10 mini buses, and we use those primarily for schools such as McAuliffe Heights that transport from all over the city. So it's just more efficient to use those size vehicles. The primary use of our vans is for special education students that need quieter settings or need aids on the vehicles with them to help to have them successfully transported to school. So those are the 3, and we have wheelchair vehicles, of course, for students that require that kind of transportation. Okay. So and I did make a little note up in the corner here. Through some diligence on Aaron's part and kind of maximizing our routes, our allowed costs jumped from 21 data, which is in this slide here, that we just got our subsidy report within the last month, and we're up to 63.9% of allowed costs. So we have made some progress on getting our reimbursements up to where they need to be. I'm going to go to slide number 13. This shows, again, this is my other unfunded mandate. So this shows the shortfall in our transportation reimbursement. So that allowed cost that I spoke about, we don't get that whole allowed cost back in our reimbursement. That money is reduced by our market value aid ratio. So sorry about that. So our market value aid ratio is based on our existing market value and a $500,000 of that market value. And it varies from year to year. So currently we only get about 70% of that allowed cost back in reimbursement. So in the 23-24 year, we're looking at a $2.8 million shortfall in our transportation costs versus what our revenue is or our subsidy reimbursement is. So this is another area where we are underfunded. The average market value aid ratio across the state is about 55%. So we're doing better than a lot of people getting at 70%, but still a significant shortfall in what our expenditure is versus what our reimbursement is. Any questions on that? Okay.
Want to add real quick. So when it comes to transportation, students are eligible for transportation if they are outside of a 1.5 mile barrier. Anything under that, we would not get any reimbursement for if we would provide for those students. Now, we have had requests, and I know you fielded requests about providing some type of transportation for students, maybe even just during the winter months, whether it be through Amtran or some other mechanism for students that live kind of on those borders, on those, they're at a mile, they're at a mile two, whatever it may be. We have talked to and we're working with Amtran on kind of reinstituting what we used to call a walker bus, which was essentially a per pay, where students, if they lived within a certain radius, Amtran would provide transportation at a rate to those people who live, out inside the 1.5 mile barrier, but still would like a transportation option to be able to get to school. So we've heard that request, and we're working on trying to figure out a solution for that, especially during the winter months or the cold months when kids, that typically walk would have to walk, 1 mile, 1.5 miles in colder or inclement weather. So
There are a number of
Do that.
hazardous routes.
Yeah, if you're going on, say, 18th, 6th Avenue, 3rd Street, yeah, that's a busy, that's a busy area. Can we designate that a hazardous route?
So they would do a road study. PennDOT would complete a traffic study, and they make the determination as to whether or not, that route or those specific roads, if they had to be crossed, if they're not manned by a crossing guard, would fall into that. And then we would provide kind of a transportation waiver in those instances. And I will tell you that Sue and her team, when at all possible, if they can figure something out for the family and the kid, they do. But again, we have heard the concerns, and we're looking at options for kids that don't necessarily qualify under transportation.
Is this, who drives this formula? Is it federal or state?
This is state.
I mean, I think the issue with all of this is every year you're subjected to this stuff. We're put in a difficult position. People raise hell because you have to raise taxes. And then we do it and everybody forgets about this. So we just do it again next year. And, I mean, we got to continue to put the pressure on our state legislators to do something about this. I wonder how long this formula has existed and when it was constructed. I'm sure it's been a long time, and we just got to continue to call attention to this stuff because we're just going to be doing this every year. All these unfunded mandates, they're thrown on the local school districts across the state, and everybody just goes along every year. So it gets frustrating.
Go ahead.
Actually gave our authorization for our contracted company to look at grant funding and look at other ways to try to reduce their costs that can eventually get passed on to us by pursuing electric options with busing. So
Amtram's do natural gas, right?
We don't, yeah, Antrim, all of their fleet is now natural gas. Yes. Yes.
and Sue, our Amtran reimbursement is 100%, correct?
Our Amtran reimbursement is also reduced by the market value aid ratio, but it is.
It's higher than
Yeah.
the state formula.
Any other questions on transportation? And the formula is nothing compared to the record keeping we have to keep behind it to support it. So just so you know, that piece of the puzzle is an adventure as well. Yeah.
Well, and Sue brings this up to me all the time. We tend to forget, or at least don't factor in the personnel costs involved in all of these things that we're doing. Like they're not even part of the hard costs. They're the behind the scenes costs that the man hours and the time and the personnel involved in the processing all of this doesn't typically get factored into the hard number. But it's definitely there. And that's another increasing when she talks about record keeping and reporting and all the things that we have to do on an annual basis. It all feeds into that.
You have to drive the bus. You have to go on that. You wouldn't, we go on and do that. That is part of the. You don't like that, do it. That, you already have to do that. You might handle that.
So moving on to buildings and grounds. So this is within the 2000 expenditure category. This is the maintenance expense. So I've given you three different. So the maroon color is the total maintenance expense that includes salaries, benefits, and capital purchases that we've made throughout this period of time. The pinkish category mauve, I don't know what real color that is. Well, you can make it up in your head. That one is without capital expenditures. And then the gray line is just actual maintenance costs without salary and benefits. So that's the cost, repairs and maintenance of all of the buildings, supplies that they had to purchase, all of those types of things. So Doug and his team have been operating with the same budget for at least the last 3 years, and have been able to keep that on a somewhat level basis. That includes our lawn care and our pest care, pest control, the garbage contracts. For some reason, telephone bills are in this category as well. So there's odd things that are in here, but they've done a great job keeping those level. I wanted to break out. So one of the biggest expenses in here is utility costs. So utility costs run us close to $2 million a year for water, natural gas, and electric costs. We do negotiate a contract with an energy broker every year. And you can see you win some, you lose some. So we are right at the moment, our electric contract, we've been able to lock our rate at about 5 cents per kilowatt. The average commercial rate in Pennsylvania right at the minute, it's about 11 cents. So we're really doing well. That rate is locked until July of 25. Our natural gas rate is not so good. So we locked that at just over $3 a decatherm. The Henry Hub price when I did this slide presentation was $2.40. So we enjoyed a lower rate on that rate lock for about 3 or 4 months, and then natural gas rates dropped and we were unfortunately locked. I will renegotiate that gas rate here because it's going to expire in June. One of the things that I was amazed at when I started with the school district was all of the money that we expend for students outside of our walls. So that includes cyber school tuition, which is about $3.4 million. Sending students to the VOTEC school, which runs about $2.5 million every year. Our Title I money, so the federal money that we get from the federal government to support our elementary schools, almost 103,000 of that goes to supporting elementary buildings in non-public settings. And we are required, because we provide transportation to our students, we are required to transport non-public students. So we spend, and this is after our reimbursement, about $384,000 every year transporting non-public students to non-public buildings. So I just throwing that out there for your consideration. These are things that as a public school district, we do receive funding for some of that in our basic ed formula, but not nearly enough to cover all these expenditures. It's like $300 a student. Yeah, $300. So the transportation reimbursement that we get for a non-public students, just over $300 was that question. The next page gives you a graphic trend of our cyber school tuition trends over the last couple of years. You'll see that peak of $4 million in 2021 is directly related to the pandemic when many families decided to keep their students home during COVID. It is dropping over the last couple of years, and I think that is a direct result of the efforts of our Altoona Cyber Academy team and how they are calling and getting students from outside cybers back into our building, which is great. It's a money-saving event for all of us.
Not only a money-saving event, it's an educational advantage to those students that decide to stay within our programs. And I will constantly sing that from the top of the hills. We can do it better. We can do it less expensively. And that's attributed to our administrators and teachers that run that program. So again, we encourage at all costs, anytime we get an enrollment, we're calling those families like, do you know about our program? Can we help convince you to take advantage of what we had to offer? So Sue and Camilla are always on top of that, and they're always notifying us of enrollment notifications so that we can jump on that. I know Mr. McGinnis and his team does an outstanding job of trying to recruit back if at all possible. And again, I think I did mention to you, I was at a meeting with all of our local representatives, Cambria County, Bedford County, Blair County, a couple of weeks ago, and not one of them, every single one of them said they would stand behind legislation that would support that if you ran your own cyber academy, that your kids would be required within your district to go to your cyber academy. And basically I went up and shook all their hands and said, if you can make that happen, you will save public education. And pardon me? Well, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. And there were people that called them out on the carpet and brought that up. And it's like, well, why don't we get behind that legislation when that goes to educational committee and comes out on the House or the Senate floor for consideration? Why are we not in favor of that? Because there was a bill, I forget what House bill it was, but it was based out of Erie a couple years back, where that's exactly what the legislation was for cyber charter reform. It was, if your school district is operating their own public cyber charter, your kids would be required to attend that public cyber charter in lieu of attending an outside public cyber charter. And it never even got to a vote, never got out of committee. Yep. That would be awesome. We put enough pressure on some local sides, they're at least now not waiting until it is not schools back. That will continue to put that pressure on. It doesn't have to see this.
Last piece I wanted to bring up was just, as a school district, we don't just support our students, and a lot of the taxes not a lot, but a portion of the taxes that taxpayers can pay to the school district, they do go to support things within the community. And I've listed just a couple of them. We have a fantastic adult education program. People that have had to leave high school for some reason and not able to earn a diploma can come into our adult education program. They get schooling on how to pass the GED exam. They get support on doing those types of things. The Altoona Area Public Library, if you haven't visited there lately, they have amazing programs for kids down there. They do activities on a regular basis. Career Link is now in that building, so we're able to support employment opportunities throughout the district by using a building that's owned by and maintained by the Alton Area School District. So that does great things. The Central Blair Rec Commission, of course, offers all kinds of athletic opportunities, fields, and training for students throughout the district. We're supporters of that program. Mansion Park is used not just by our sporting teams, but by teams throughout the region. I don't think you can go there during the day when when that track is open and not find a member of the community walking the track. So I think it's used heavily by the community. The field house is also used by various sporting organizations throughout the county and throughout the state. All of our playgrounds and intramural fields are open to kids almost all the time. I threw you under the bus. The Altoona Youth Baseball League uses a lot of the fields throughout the school district to practice and to play and to have their games. And again, our auditoriums too are open to groups from the Mishler to the Symphony to a lot of local dance organizations. So we just don't support programs with in the school setting. We do a lot of outreach into the community, promoting our buildings, supporting the community and helping a lot of people. And each and every one of you, thank you for being on the board and helping us, do that, just not for our kids, but for everybody within Blair County.
Things, I want to say it was about 200 grand. Haley, was that about, or no? I'm sorry. Yeah, 100,000. Again, but the value that pays off to our community, all you gotta do is look at our Facebook page to see the announcements that Paula puts out there, the number of graduates that we're celebrating on, and all that does is benefit the community. These are people that now can be gainfully employed. They're productive members, earning a living, livable wage in our community, raising a family here. There's a lot of residual value in adult ed, and I feel like that our people do a fantastic job.
It varies. Some students come in and are only there for a month or two. I can tell you the team there, they've exceeded their goals that have been set from adult education. We're actually going to be putting on the board, we're actually able to apply for additional monies because they've done such a great job. And we had already put that on the board. Now there's additional money that's coming out. So it varies with numbers throughout the year. But we do, like I said, exceed the goals every year. They do a fantastic job.
We have, Tina Swanford and her team, Haley and her team, and they take it personally. They look at every individual case as an opportunity to save a life and really help create a family. So, the work that they do is admirable. We're seeing a lot of kids that have maybe weren't successful the first time through, where they withdrew or they just aged out and stopped coming to school, that are now wanting to come back, realize, they're 19, 20. I can't get hired. I can't try to apply for the military. I can't do anything. I need options, and having that ability to be able to provide them with a pathway to get to those options is really key. So, it's their team does an outstanding job, and they take every individual case personally. They want to make sure that they're seeing it through to the end and celebrating them to graduation.
That was all the information I had on the financial data. I'm going to turn it over to Camilla to talk about some of the open enrollment information.
And this is just an FYI that open enrollment will start next Monday and will run until the 22nd. We have educational sessions planned. We have, we're using our software, Skyward, for online enrollment, which is, I think it's our third or fourth year that we've offered that. Lots of supports, and just a reminder that we are self-insured. So we are always looking at our costs. Sue has done an exhaustive analysis of our administrative costs and is trying to find ways that we can cut costs for some services that are not utilized very heavily by the employees. But we did have an actuary look at our claims data and come up with a recommendation for the premiums for next year. And the rates, if you'll turn to page 21, on the next board meeting, we will be adding these to the agenda for your approval for our 24-25 proposed rates. And on the page behind it is the comparison between 23-24 rates and 24-25 rates. Now, the employees, this won't affect the employees that for their premium share, because the premium shares were approved during the collective bargaining process. They were negotiated, and their premium share follows the agreement. It doesn't tie to the rates, except for the teachers on the highest high mark, which that's actually that highest high mark rate on the far right column. In the agreement, they agreed to pay 25% of the premium. So anyone who's on that plan, and I believe there are only 7 or 8 current employees who are on that plan, and they will feel an increase. No one else, no other current employee will. Retirees or anyone who has left and is on our COBRA, is still on our plan under COBRA, which gives them 18 months of coverage per the law if they choose it. Those COBRA rates did go up, and their rates, anyone who's retired or left the district and is on COBRA, their rates will go up. And that page 22 is the comparison of the rates. It's a 6% increase, which those of you who are in business, 6% is very fair and much lower than what the industry's increases are. I know places that have seen a 30% increase. So this keeps us within our expectation and our budgeted amount for what we project for hospitalization.
Do we know yet what the Blair County School Consortium, if they have an increase or not? Do we know yet?
That is a great question, and I'll get that information.
Because I got in a little debate at the conclusion of the last meeting over there. But I'd be curious to know. I know that the Greater Altoona Career Technology Center feels that they got a favorable rate, but also if you know how these things work, you always get a favorable rate coming in, and then they stick it to you in the future. So I'd be curious to know.
I'll get that information.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to point out, I know Sue and Camilla both working very hard to look at our overall administrative costs and try and find ways to be efficient to where we can increase services to employees, however, decreasing either unutilized and or unnecessary administrative costs that we're realizing. There are certain administrative fees that we're paying $25 a month per employee, $30 a month per employee, whatever it may be. We've done an analysis of those, and the ones that we can eliminate and cut, we are doing that. However, we are looking at ways that we can increase education and or services that we are finding that employees are utilizing or that they're finding benefit in, so that we can continue to increase those services for them. However, decrease the cost of the district by eliminating thousands and thousands of dollars of administrative fees that are just completely unnecessary. So again, thank you to Sue and Camilla for doing that analysis. And I know that just in the short time that we've been leading up to open enrollment, we've provided building site level educational opportunities. We've given opportunities for employees that if they want to sit down and talk directly with the insurance provider about what is the best option for them in their specific scenario with their family, with medical pre-existing conditions, whatever it may be. They've had that opportunity. We're going to have bulk meetings at elementary and secondary meetings for just kind of overall going over those. We want to make sure everyone is as informed as they can be when making their choice for the plan that is best for them and makes the most financial and healthcare sense for them and their family.
Since we moved to these plans, have we recognized a savings? I guess that is my question.
we can touch on that on at the next committee of the whole, and show those statistics. Being self-insured and as costs go up, not only healthcare costs, the concerning costs are the drugs and all these biologics, and you've all seen the commercials. And there's one that they talk about that seems very innocent. You can get this drug for bulging eyes, and that treatment in this area costs $800,000. And our stop loss is 300,000. So we don't pay the full 800, but when an insurance company has to pick up the other 500,000, the rates are going to go up and they may not want to quote us. So we're trying to put some things in place where we at least have some obstacles in place where we make sure that it's really medically necessary and that everything else has been exhausted before we go to some of those treatments. But the prescriptions and all these drugs, and Pat Riley's telling us that there are some drugs that are coming out that are like $2 million. Those are very concerning. And we're looking at, we met with Capital RX to find out, is there anything else? We're going to meet with we've been very happy with Capital RX, and they've given us 100% of the rebates on the drugs, which are between $500,000 and $750,000 a year. So, and we were not getting those kinds of rebates when we were with UPMC, with Express Scripts. So we're getting all of those rebates back, but there are some other opportunities, possibly getting drugs internationally, certain types of drugs internationally, that we're looking into to see if that will help us as number one, be an option. Number two, save not only us, but the out of pocket for our employees as well. So we're always trying to find high quality at the lowest price, and not get comfortable with where we are, just trying to always be better. It goes back to, I'll have to go, I found something when I was going through a file, I think it was 2012. Back, you'll remember when Dean Wilt was here, and we would kind of jump. We'd have a lot of claims when we were self-insured, and then the next year they'd get a fully insured quote, but that was, fully insured quotes are really expensive. And we got a fully insured quote it was pre-COVID. And it was significantly, it was 20% at least higher than what we were normally paying. So it's been a while. And now when we bring it up, any broker that we have talked to has said that for a district our size, or for a business our size, you should be fully insured. I mean, you should be self-insured. You wouldn't be fully insured. And Val may be able to address that better.
Yeah, I would just say healthcare in general, shining a light on everything is beneficial. So when you're self-insured, like we are, everything's transparent. You can't hide pharmacy benefit management costs like everybody else does. Because in the real world, your pharmacy spend could be 22%, 24%, but with a transparent pharmacy benefit management company like Capital RX, it's 5%. It's really low, but you're able to parse everything, every part of the equation out and bid it out, actually, right? Who's going to administer your plan? Who's going to provide you the network? In a fully insured product, you don't know any of those things. And so they have a significant advantage. They have to work a little harder. What we've seen is the easy thing to do is get a fully insured plan, because there's no work involved, but it costs you a lot of money And, I'll just be transparent myself. I'm no longer involved with People One Health who is on here. I might own like a 0.5%. But what they're doing is translating into Florida of all places. Orange County School District has vetted this service and has decided to offer it to all their employees. So they're going to open four offices down there. Putnam County Schools is also going to offer it down there. And these are school districts in Florida. The board members are paid. They're 5 members and they're paid a significant amount of money to sort of operate it like a business. So it's been pretty well vetted down there, and so these ladies work hard, but they're doing the right thing for the taxpayers in the community. And it's not that everybody has to choose People One. I'm not saying that, but the fact that the entire district, all the employees are in a self-insured model at the size we are, it's just the right thing to do. And I know in the past there's been some debate, but you're flying blind if you don't do what we're doing. And it's one way of sort of fighting back against a system that's, in this town, it's almost becoming monopoly. And this state is rare in that all the large providers, the health systems, are also the largest insurers. Geisinger and Geisinger Health Plan, UPMC and UPMC Health Plan. Allegheny Health Network is owned by Highmark. So the odds are really stacked against you in the state of Pennsylvania, but these ladies fight a good battle. So thank you.
Any other questions?
We're good. Thank you all for your questions tonight. That makes the meeting, it kind of gives us direction about what's concerning you. So any questions or comments, things you want to know, please feel free to email us and we're happy to include it in the next presentations. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything for
If board members could give me 5 to 8 minutes in executive just after this meeting, very briefly, to go over a personnel thing. 5 to 8, I promise. Exclamation point.
So will we come back for me to adjourn, or can I adjourn now? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed?